Hi, good morning, everybody. We have Rae Lam here and Janelle Persaud. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We have Janelle Persaud here from NCN. You're still at NCN, right? Last time I had somebody I thought was from NCN here, and they said, "Oh, I don't work here anymore." So I have to make sure this time. And Rae Lam here. She's a teacher at Marian. Marian. Yeah. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about victim blaming and the role of the media. Now, why we chose to talk about it is because recently in the news and on social media we've seen things concerning Kescia Branche, and this would have caused many other stories to kind of pop up. So today we'll be looking at several of that. And now, when it comes to victim blaming, though, we were actually just talking about it and how the media has a role to play in framing. Now, me and Rae were talking about it just now, and we were explaining how when it comes to a story, that is important for the way something is framed, because then it can have certain implications for that story. And you were talking about one of the stories where a child's picture was used, and how it was shown. It kind of brought attention away from that. So I'm gonna let you kind of explain the story of it for them.
Might have been a few months ago. I can't remember the exact month, but a reporter posted a picture on his personal page of a missing child. They couldn't find her family, and instead of just putting her face up, he put a full body picture, and the child was wearing one of these cropped bikini tops and a little what we call hot pants back in my day. And I remember thinking, let me just read the comments to see where this conversation would go. And I was not wrong, because suddenly it shifted from finding this child's mother or father or family members to, oh my God, what kind of mother sends her child out looking like that? And I remember contacting the reporter under the post, and I said, what if I told you could tell this story without this image in the way it did? And he was very aggressive initially, but then we got to an understanding afterwards. But it's the framing of it. When you move from the issue at hand to this, we're judging the mother, we're judging the father, we're judging everybody else except the thing we should be judging, which is finding this child's parents because they're missing. And then it just kind of escalated from there. I started to look at so many other instances where at the back of your head, something is wrong, but you can't pinpoint it. And then it dawned on me that the gatekeepers, the media, whether intentional or otherwise, pictures that they chose or angles that they chose to take influenced how we view the story or what we took from it. And oftentimes it removed the element that you were trying to pay attention to, which was a missing child or a missing woman or abuse or whatever form. It suddenly became about the people's personal lives, their sex lives, their what they did 5 days ago, 5 years ago. And again, always taking away from the issue at hand, which would have been, and suddenly now it turns on everybody and it becomes victim blaming. Yeah. And that was scary for me because we're a small society. Information comes to us, whether it's true or not, and we use it, allow us to influence it. It isn't until we feel it, then we understand what the other person is going through. So for me, victim blaming is personal in that sense because I deal with minors. And I'm very careful about how down to like my children's birthday parties, I ask permission from parents to post pictures of their children. Yeah. Oftentimes I will just post my own, but anybody else's child, could I post these pictures? And people are looking at me like, yeah, because it's not something they think about. Yeah. And you don't want, because you're dealing with minors, you have to tend to protect them in a certain way. But then those same minors can become victims. In the sense, they're victim blamed for things that are beyond their control at that point.
Now, Janelle, you're in the media, and I know when I raised this with you first, you said that you know that there were certain reasons why certain angles might have been taken. You want to go in a bit about that?
Well, you see, the thing is, so I've read the explanations that people have given. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily agree with them. I've read explanations, and some of them center on the fact that it's just the information that was given. So you're trying to solve a problem or case, mm-hmm. and based on the information, this is what happened. So the intent might not be to blame the victim for whatever whatever would have happened, but just providing the information that is out there. And you're right, it's about framing, but I think importantly, it has to come from knowledge. The thing is, I don't think this conversation that we're having, the whole issue of victimhood, is not something that we have been having as a conversation for a long time.
Yeah.
I myself just very recently, maybe a couple of years ago, when I started reading, wider, then I got to understand what this really means. I probably did before not even know or understand what I was doing. So I think it's important that we have and involve the media. The Guyana Press Association is the body, the umbrella body for the media in Guyana. And I think when we're looking at reporting on these issues, to address the sensitive nature of them and how we can report the facts, but without passing judgment on people. And so when I think we're having the conversation too, we got to try not to be aggressive. So that if you're saying, because I don't know the intent of the journalist or the writer, so if I'm saying to him or her, hey, maybe you should have taken this angle or whatever, I do it in not in an aggressive way, so that they don't, so that we have the conversation, rationally say, or even inbox them. Because if you start an argument, rational thought comes out and you just go back and forth and it gets personal and nobody gets to the point at the end of the day. And I've seen that happen as regards to this Kescia Branche case. And we haven't been discussing the issue because we got personal after a time. So I think it comes with the lack of knowledge and us, even through the GPA or among ourselves and organizations, NGOs that are doing work in this area to engage the media and have sessions, awareness sessions, so that their reportage could be different and accommodating to those sensitive.
Yeah, that is definitely needed, because I was trying to get somebody from the GPA here today to talk, but some were willing, but they weren't unable due to time and other issues. But definitely we need to look into the option of media sensitivity training when it comes to stories that involve particularly sexual violence, because it's more about intent. A lot of people don't go around intending to hurt somebody or say something that can be construed in a different way. That's why training is so necessary, particularly when it comes to journalism. When you put out stories out there, you have a very large audience, and a lot of times people, they just see something and that's what they run with. So we need to be very, very careful with the way in which we frame certain things. And this actually brought up one of the cases that I was talking to Andai a couple of days ago about, actually, which was the Monica Reese case. And the Monica Reese case, I was actually reading some of the stories afterwards, and most of the stories you read, you would see things that we couldn't really find who the killer was, because Monica Reese, during that same day with her murder, she was seeing so many different men, and it was just like all these things. She might have had sex with these men, so it's difficult to kind of pinpoint who she was with. And when you have this kind of victim blaming, we can kind of see why it was so difficult, because even though they had an idea of who did the killing of Monica Reese, because of the constant skewing of her image and certain information being in the press, then that was not the case. The person was never caught, they were never imprisoned. So framing is very, very, very important. Now, Robert here asks, when journalists get out of hand, then we have to ask, who watches the watchers? I think that's where I think the GPA should definitely come into this. I haven't seen a response from them. Has there been a response on
regarding the issue? No, I haven't seen one. I'm not sure. But we monitor ourselves, and that's what society is. Society is if you find that actions are taken by one group or the other, then you speak out against them. Various forms. They're even through social media, you can contact them directly and you can express your concerns. And I think we're getting to a point of maturity where we could openly accept positive criticism.
I think
Are we at that point where we can accept positive criticism?
I hope.
A couple days ago at Master.
I think one of the problems with framing, though, is the fact that two types of framing happen. There's that natural framing that happens, you react to physical things. And then there's one where the gatekeepers, or in our case, media, they're privy to information the rest of the public doesn't have. And so even for them, that social response, that social aspect of framing that comes into place, because we all have inherent biases. Mm-hmm. And so you read an information and you're Catholic or you're Christian or you're Muslim or Hindu, and all of these things come together and form because you've been cultured in a certain way. So that is that social bias that is initially causing the problem. And that is the one I think that we need to be aware of all the time, because the natural response is your first response. Yeah. But then you sit down and you think about it, and as you start thinking, all these other factors start coming into play. And that is where you're going to push, the information that you're going through. So cultural change is, as much as I think it's necessary, what we're dealing with is that second aspect of framing, which is inherently the one that is for me, is the most dangerous of the two. The one that we're not aware of, and it's just sitting there waiting. Because, for instance, in the Kescia Branche story, one reporter used the term inappropriate touching. And I'm reading this article and I'm thinking, what is inappropriate touching? And if you considered it inappropriate touching, why did nobody do anything? Yeah. Because if it's inappropriate, clearly she would have been reacting. And so all of these details tend to pop up. In the Monica Reed's case, for instance, my most vivid image of her is a picture, and it's the one that we saw every single time.
I know about this picture even before I knew who Monica Reed was. This is how popular that picture is.
And my own personal experience with that picture was, I remember a couple of months prior to Miss Reed's dying, was me seeing this similar outfit in the boutique and saying to my mother, I want this outfit, it's so cute. And my mother saying to me and my grandmother, no, only prostitutes wear that. And then the Monica Reed story happened, and every single article popped up with her. Even now when you Google it online, that is a picture of Monica with this jeans and spandex outfit and the dark glasses, as if she was this kind of, sultry mistress of the night, just out there trying to, right.
Yeah. So we were just talking about this outfit, like, I don't know how this outfit was even considered promiscuous. This looked like what I would be forced to go to church.
I don't know what you could tell me today if that was promiscuous. My God.
But you see, it's coming back to cultural, because we're looking at an outfit now going, what were you,
Yeah.
So
no, but when you talk about framing, so I wanted to point to the issue of sensationalism when it comes to reporting.
Definitely.
But the report, but these media, they have an audience too. So just like the audience can take certain things away and engage in it, then a lot of these people want to take in the kind of information certain media houses carry. Like, people would watch one media house, the news from one outlet over another because of how they carry the angle. So I think it's a national cultural change, because if you understand, if I don't make an issue sensational, and if I don't, as a reader, if I say as a reader, that's not the kind of thing I'm interested in, and I'm going to stay away from that kind of thing, then you don't have people producing it. But people are feeling, because if I carry a story this way, and the thing to you, trying to get the best story out of it, people are competing. You're trying to get the best story out of it. So you got your information from your sources or whatever, and this is what your sources say, and you feel like you got a better story. Say I'm for Kaiser News, I got a better story than that news if I get all of this, and I carry it out. So they're all competing and not considering anything else but their own competition and what people say, hey, this story, I'm going to read it, I don't read this. And it's about sales, and all of these things are connected.
Yeah, but I mean, as a journalist, you have a certain responsibility to the public.
Yeah. So there's like you do, but it's a very thin line, which is why I came back why I keep going back to culture and knowledge. It's about awareness and education, and that does not come overnight. It doesn't. So that's why I said it has to be a massive or comprehensive effort taken from the ground up. And I have my son, and that's why I do certain things now with him, so that when he's older, these things you don't have to push, because it's difficult to cram certain things in grown ups. We're already, exactly. So it has to be comprehensive.
One of the concerns we always have when things like this come up, particularly with the media, is the issue of censorship, right? we always want to know, people always want to know, like, how much information should the media release, how much should they not, and is it our duty as a public to question how much they should release or not? And if we do that, are we impeding on some kind of journalism? So I don't know. I don't feel like it's censorship necessarily if you're asking people to be cognizant of the way in which they frame certain information. Because even while we can say, yes, you draw an inference from this story, that's your inference, that is not my fault as a journalist. And then people keep drawing these inferences. Then at some point, you need to address your role in that story. Because you can't necessarily keep saying that I have no part to play in this and how this story is seen, when everybody reading your story is talking about that particular aspect of it. And they're saying, no, this is not the way how it should be. And then you're buttoning down on that. As a journalist, I mean, I have not been in a newsroom in a while. I don't even consider myself a journalist because I used to be in journalism for like 3 months, and then I came out. I was at Kaiser News. And then, I don't know, so I've always felt, though, that when it comes to journalism, you need to be very, very careful, particularly when children are involved or when it's something related to sexual violence or abuse or something like that.
And that information is passed on, because I remember being part of, like, say, when you talk about children, UNICEF training when I was much younger, participating in training which talks about how you publish images of children in vulnerable situations, so you wouldn't show their faces if they're involved in situations if they're under 18, and those rules are there. And I think generally some of us in the media, we abide by those codes. So when it comes to something, which is why I'm saying that this conversation is relatively new, if you have a massive push and then you engage, maybe that's a code that we could develop. As I'm saying, the conversation, we still have people who think, and that's one I initiated still on Ask Me campaign, we have authorities, government officials, people in state agencies who think that they need to tell women, perhaps if you dress this way, you wouldn't be subjected to certain kinds of treatment. And you have people supporting it and thinking that that's the right way. I've had conversations with people we consider to be intellectuals, and they still don't get that. If you understand, they still don't get it. So I think because the topic is relatively new, perhaps it's a code that you could push the media to adopt. If you understand, because there are codes that we abide by, and that we hold each other to. When it comes to politics, there are codes that we're held to when it comes to coverage of elections and so on, and certain social issues. And since this is a new conversation, perhaps this conversation and your efforts online and through whatever NGOs could be something that we push at a broader level, GPA, other media houses, to support this. Because I am totally against victim blaming, and I know how all the cracks through which they could slip through without even being cognizant that they are.
Coming back to the Kescia Branche story, I hope I'm pronouncing her first name correctly. Okay. One of the things that frightened me was the relative ease at which we had these comments being made about her personal life. In addition to that, the other thing that frightened me is that as the news story broke and as it came out, more and more details that were critical before in terms of framing was only now coming to light. I mean, like for instance, the one where they discovered her phone with a mail and the messaging and things like that. But the initial, which was more critical than the fact that she was being, touched inappropriately in a club at that point. And for me, that was my problem. For me, I would have left out a number of details initially until I had.
And see, that's the thing. So I get where you. I think I am exactly. So I'm coming from a decent point where I get what you're saying, but I also understand. I don't want to say challenges, but the approaches of media houses. Because, I mean, how do you know that? How do you determine the information that you have and know what to leave out? And if I don't carry this, then what information I'm going to get tomorrow? I mean, we've made significant headway in this case, but there are lots of other cases where there was nothing.
All right, I'll give you another example of what I'm talking about. the recent police, where the two police, well, the male police shot his partner. The headline the next day screamed, "Deadly fight." Leaves one dead and one critically wounded. And in my head, I'm thinking, that was not a fight. A fight suggested that two people were equally or on equal footing. And what we had was one person walking up to another one, firing a first shot, and she started to run. And then he emptied 4 more bullets at her. And there it is, the headline the next day screaming, "Deadly fight." And I'm sitting there going like, and true to form, on the comments underneath, because of that heading alone, yeah, she was probably sleeping with all the senior officers, and somehow that it was okay. Yeah. Because, we shouldn't be playing with men's emotions, and we shouldn't be doing this. And I remember wisecracking to a friend of mine. I said, well, if we were judging purely on the fact of people sleeping around the place, then a lot of dudes would be dead. Yep. If we were using that as a justification for anything. But again, it comes back to framing. There was a suggestion that a victim had equal or similar force to extol at that moment, and that wasn't the case. But I feel like I'm banging my head against the wall sometimes when I talk about certain things, because I have a number of young males under my influence. And so I always have to be conscious of the fact that I am dealing with teenage boys coming from all of these other perspectives and cultures and biases and things like that. And I remember having a discussion with them after the Kescia Branche story broke. And I said to them, if you saw someone being touched inappropriately in a club, or what you thought was inappropriate, what would you do? Would you just keep that information, or, to report it to somebody later? Nobody did anything at that time. What? But the information is just there. Oh, she was here, then she was there, and then some police officers showed up, and so all of that is just that framing. Is that information critical to the public is my question. Or is it just critical to the investigating officers?
Before I answer, just one comment here caught my attention from Kescia Bruce, who was talking about the sensationalism journalism often would take with certain stories, and he wants to, I think it's actually similar to your question, right? He wants to know whether it would mean we have to rein in on our journalistic freedom, but then again, to what degree do we necessarily do this, and to what degree can that be considered to be stifling the media?
Which is why I think it's best to have an engagement with the wider media fraternity, so that you get a sense they can say what is too much and what isn't. Which is why when you ask me, when you ask me if I can make this, and I said to you, I don't know if you're gonna want me to do this because I can't really defend or speak to certain things. No, listen. You need to have the conversation with media people, because I think there's a thin line, and it could be crossed. So you need to ensure that it's not crossed, and the conversation, the engagement that you have is one that will be. I don't see it as controlling necessarily or infringing on those the freedom of expression, the rights that we're allowed. But I think if you understand what your responsibilities are or what they could be, then you can still have headlines that are catchy, but without blaming anybody or without suggesting anything inside of it. But it comes back again to awareness, and that can't happen just like that.
Here's another concern I have with that.
Oh, by the way, I'm not like the representative.
No.
I'm just showing whatever different disclaimer. I am not the official representative guy in media. So please.
Here's my other question. What if I was looking at the media coverage and I had vital information at that moment? I was there. I may have remembered something, but days later. Mm-hmm. But then I've already been conditioned by all of these other little things. Yeah. And my inherent bias is that there's certain things there that I am not party to. I don't want to be party to. Mm-hmm. And so I just dismiss it as, oh, she's a party girl anyways. So I'm not even going to bother with that. She gets what she gets because she got it. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I didn't have certain kinds of information, I might have been more
But that approach
privy.
you're taking might result in us never reporting a case
No,
at all.
not reporting.
No reporting.
But
on
again,
a
my thing
situation.
is, what is critical for public consumption versus what is just, as a reporter, you get this
You know, I
information.
should flip the other side. Listen, I'm trying to make it. Flip the other side because you could just say, sorry talking. So you could just say, well, this young lady, this happened, whatever, and it could go the complete opposite way. Somebody could, I missed the point that I wanted to make. Just like it could go a bad way, the person could not come forward. It could also sway a person's belief in the other direction. So it can go either way.
That's a valid point. I take it.
Yeah, that's true. But as you were saying that, I remember that, and it's crazy how many things the Monica Reese case has a similarity to this, because one of the things also with the Monica Reese case was that while persons would have had information on the case because of certain information that was in the media, persons were afraid to come out, and those were in some of the follow-up articles that we were seeing though, because the case would have been reopened. And when you read the articles, they actually had persons who were afraid to come because they were afraid that the media would have kind of made it seem in a different way and probably gotten into trouble or
Like, media is
something
not
like
the
that.
place for you to go. If you have information regarding a case, go to
Go to
the
the
police.
police.
Because the media's job is not the case. If we call somebody, if we get any of people feel more comfortable coming to the media, then that's fine. But if you have information, this is not me. I'm not speaking as a journalist here. I'm speaking as a human being. If you have information,
Speaking as Janelle.
if you have information, then go to the police and report the information. And so, if you understand, so
No, but even that, I mean, there's so many things you have to think about it, because even that, when you go to the police now, the police, they have their media friends who they feed information, and then if that information they get now can come back to that person.
Exactly. But when police feed their information to media friends, it is done under the conditions of certain things because the police could get in trouble. Mm-hmm. You can never tell which police give what information to, and they're not allowed to give out names, or they can say, we got this information or whatever. And when you report to me, you can see a source. So it doesn't point to any particular person. So identity and all of those things are don't come into play in that case, because you're not allowed under those conditions, but especially when it's from a source to divulge that information. So that issue is a non-issue basically.
I don't quite agree, but okay.
There's something going on in SASA, right? And you're privy to this information. And there are several officers in SASA who could give me this very information. There's Joel, there's some other people, whatever. And this information could bring SASA down or whatever else, right? And you know me as a journalist, and you say, Janelle, this. I can report it, and there are no fingers pointing at you for giving me information. And then it could be any of the 10 people employed by SASA. How will you know which one of these people gave me this information? And that's how you maintain your relationship. So in the future, if something else happens, you can call me. But if I breach that agreement that we have, the agreement of anonymity, then you're never going to get information from me again, because I'm not going to tell you anything. So that's why I was saying it is a non-issue, because if I have a source, there is no way I'm going to breach that agreement, because I want the source to continue feeding information.
Okay, cool. I understand. I get that point. Now, one thing I actually wanted to talk to you about, you had mentioned you started.
It's kind of dormant right now. Yes,
it's kind of dormant right now.
Still asking for Guyana. It's surrounded. It's like same thing surrounding victim blaming, but it's about how women dress and carry themselves as an encouragement for rape. And it followed on the heels of when I think it was Higgins. The police, when he had said, but because there were lots of cases, rape cases, and he was saying, but women should dress a certain way or whatever, and I got upset. Because in my own personal life, I've had to deal with issues like in relationships with boyfriends and so on, saying, like, addressing things that I wear or whatever as a problem, and prostitutes, only prostitutes, like, the bustier, I love the boobs. Like it in your waist, and it pushes up your boobs, and then if you wear, like, something at the bottom, and you go for beauty. A boyfriend told me that he actually banned me from wearing it because only prostitutes wear bustier. I mean, I was dumped because one night I was like, I'm wearing the bustier because I love wearing bustiers. So anyway, the point is it surrounds that, because I got so frustrated because you have to hear your personal life and whatever, and I get
the personal is the political, guys.
But then you have to hear from people in in power, telling the rest of the country, telling women, telling girls that, hey, maybe you were responsible for the fact that you were raped because your dress was too short, or maybe you were responsible for the fact that you were raped because you drank too much in a bar, or you partied too much. And so I thought it was important, and I saw like the plethora of comments were supportive of that kind of thinking, and it's still there. So I started the campaign, you know, to share, had people some posters, but it wasn't steady enough. The page is still there. It's just not as active as I wanted.
So how can we, since we're having this conversation now, how can we help you now move your page from just being a page into the realm of having these kinds of discussions? I don't, as much as I love the idea of engaging the media, I don't think engaging the media alone is going to be.
Of course not. Of course not.
What I'm thinking is perhaps looking at younger generations. And I mean, as a mom of 2 boys, I'm always cognizant of how people speak to them and how they label them. And I've lost many friends because of it. You know, like they say things to me like, "Oh my God, your little one is going to be such a heartbreaker." I have to do the same. You know, or they say when your daughter gets older, when your girls get older, your dad is going to have to get a gun for them. And I'm looking at these people and thinking, okay, there's clearly a disconnect somewhere here.
You don't realize how that's conditioning.
You know, because I'm sitting there thinking, my oldest is 12, my youngest is 5, at least the boys are. And I'm like, why are you looking at my child and thinking what he's going to look like as a teenager? And I have to rear my thoughts back in, because at that moment I'm realizing they're not thinking how far ahead I'm thinking. And I might just open my mouth and say something. So we've got to go, even because those young ones will now become the gatekeepers.
I always believe that early childhood education is the place to start with a lot of things.
So how do we move this page that you have into the realm? I mean, I've heard of your campaign. It's something I love, but how do we move it now from, let's say, being a social media page or being a web page to into the schools, into the classrooms? You know, how
can Rae just put you on the spot? Just put you on the spot right there.
How do we move? No, I'm putting it out here because for all we know, somebody could be sitting listening to us and who could massively take that.
Yeah.
But what I would like to see is moving that campaign into where we have the most vulnerable of our society, our children, and moving it up and getting people to understand, even if it's little by little, that how we frame the story, how we refer to the those young children, how we refer to females in the story, that take into consideration not only the fact that we don't want you censored, absolutely not, but we also want some kind of responsible journalism that takes into consideration all of these frames and the inherent biases that we carry, and the fact that information that possibly shouldn't go out there at that moment, it's just needed for, let's say, investigators or otherwise. Because one of the things that I found is Guyana is so small that when information comes to you, it's very hard to discern at that moment what is actual fact and what is hearsay. And then it pops up again maybe a week later, a month later, and that thing you heard about that person then is suddenly gospel truth, and you run with it.
Yeah.
So those are the things. I just want people, at least
with competition, it's difficult.
That too. Everybody's rushing
because who is going? Are they all going to stay? Is there going to be an agreement that they all stay their hands until, if you understand it? And they want to beat. I want to sell. They got to make money, right? So I got to beat the next guy.
Gosh, capitalism runs everything. That's the lesson here today. That's the lesson today. Yeah. Okay, guys. This has been like a really great conversation, and want to thank both of you for coming here. It's a short notice. I literally only messaged her last night, and she's been a real trooper for being here.
I'm hungry, by the way. I have breakfast for lunch.
You're just gonna show that out there if anybody wants to donate. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning in and leaving your comments and questions. One last comment from Terry and Biznot. The media plays a major role in the way our society sets certain standards and forms opinions. Very, very true. That's why I believe we need to be very careful in the way we put information out there and the way in which we frame certain stories. All right, guys. See you next week. Bye.